I once sat with a dying executive who whispered to me, "Stephen, I was so busy climbing the ladder of success, I never noticed it was leaning against the wrong wall." His words have haunted me ever since. Here was a man who had achieved everything our society tells us to pursue: wealth, status, recognition. Yet, in his final days, he didn't regret the meetings he missed or the emails he didn't answer. He regretted the life he didn't live. This conversation taught me a profound truth that I want to share with you today. Activity is not accomplishment. Motion is not progress. Being busy is not being effective. I learned this lesson the hard way myself. For years, I was incredibly busy, writing books, giving speeches, consulting with organizations around the world. I was helping thousands of people become more effective, but I was missing my own children's childhood. I was so focused on urgent demands that I was neglecting what was truly important. The very principles I was teaching others, I wasn't living myself. That's when I discovered what I call the time management matrix, and it changed everything. Not just how I managed my schedule, but how I approached my entire life. Today I want to share with you the framework that has transformed millions of lives across every culture, every profession, every walk of life. This isn't about managing time, it's about managing your life according to what matters most. By the end of our time together, you'll understand how to escape what I call the tyranny of the urgent and learn to live by principle, not pressure. Because remember, we're not here just to get things done. We're here to get the right things done. To live with purpose, meaning, and effectiveness in alignment with our deepest values and highest aspirations. Most people today are like hamsters on a wheel. Lots of motion, lots of energy, but no real progress. They run faster and faster, work longer and longer hours, yet somehow fall further behind. They're caught in what I call the activity trap, confusing being busy with being productive, mistaking motion for progress. They mistake the urgent for the important, the immediate for the essential. And in doing so, they sacrifice their most precious resource, not their time, but their life itself. I've worked with thousands of people suffering from what I term urgency addiction. They get an adrenaline rush from constant crisis management, from putting out fires, from being needed in every emergency. But they pay a terrible price for this addiction. Their health deteriorates from chronic stress, high blood pressure, insomnia, anxiety disorders. Their relationships suffer from constant distraction. They're physically present but mentally absent, always checking their phones, always thinking about the next urgent task. They miss their children's milestones because they're always putting out someone else's fires, always responding to someone else's emergency. And here's what's particularly tragic. Our culture has made busyness a badge of honor. We wear our exhaustion like a medal. We compete over who's busiest, who sleeps least, who answers emails fastest, who works the longest hours. We've created a society where being overwhelmed is seen as being important. But consider this profound truth. Some of the most important activities in life are never urgent. Building relationships with your children is never urgent until it's too late. Taking care of your health is never urgent until you're in the hospital. Developing your skills and capabilities is never urgent until you're unemployed. Let me ask you a question that I've asked thousands of people. What matters most to you? They always give me the same answers: family, health, relationships, personal growth, making a meaningful contribution. Then I ask them, where do you spend most of your time? The answer rarely matches their stated values. This disconnect between stated priorities and actual behavior is the root of modern misery. We know what matters, but we don't live what matters. We say one thing and do another. Most people live reactively, bouncing from urgent demand to urgent demand like a pinball in a machine. They've lost what I call the space between stimulus and response, that sacred pause where choice lives, where human freedom exists. They're no longer the author of their own story. They're just responding to everyone else's emergencies, living everyone else's priorities. But there's hope. What I call the time management matrix provides a way out of this trap. It's an inside-out approach that transforms not just how you spend time, but how you think about time itself. It helps you regain that space between stimulus and response. Remember, you can't change the fruit without changing the roots. And the root of effectiveness is learning to distinguish between what's urgent and what's important. What I call the time management matrix is based on a simple but profound insight that has the power to transform your entire life. All activities, everything you do, can be categorized by two factors: urgent versus important. Urgent activities demand immediate attention. They're the phone calls, the interruptions, the pressing problems that scream for our attention. Important activities are those that contribute to our mission, our values, our high priority goals. They're the activities that make a real difference in our lives. This creates 4 quadrants that literally determine the quality of your entire life. Let me explain why this matters. Because understanding this will change everything about how you approach your days, your work, and your relationships. Quadrant 1 is both urgent and important: genuine crises and emergencies. A heart attack, a house fire, a true deadline crisis, a family emergency. These are the activities that demand immediate attention and truly matter. We must spend some time here. It's unavoidable in life. But here's the key insight that most people miss. Many Quadrant 1 activities could have been prevented. The executive who has a heart attack because he never invested in Quadrant 2 health activities: exercise, proper nutrition, stress management. The project that becomes a crisis because there was no Quadrant 2 planning, no preparation, no foresight. Quadrant 2 is what I call the heart of effective personal management. These are activities that are important but not urgent: prevention, planning, relationship building, personal development, exercise before you have a heart attack, planning before the deadline becomes a crisis, relationship building before you need help, learning new skills, strategic thinking, quality family time, spiritual renewal, reading that expands your mind. Here's the profound truth that will revolutionize your life. Quadrant 2 activities are never urgent, but they determine the quality of your life. When you focus on Quadrant 2, something magical begins to happen. Quadrant 1 crises begin to shrink because you prevented many problems before they became urgent. Your capacity increases because you've invested in developing your skills and relationships. You begin to live proactively rather than reactively. You become the author of your own story rather than a character in everyone else's drama. Quadrant 3 is the quadrant of deception. Activities that seem important because they're urgent, but they're really not important at all. Some phone calls, some emails, some meetings, some interruptions. They're urgent to someone else, but not important to your mission and values. This is where enormous amounts of time and energy are wasted. People spend their lives serving other people's priorities while neglecting their own. They mistake being busy for being productive, activity for accomplishment. Quadrant 4 activities are neither urgent nor important. excessive television, mindless social media scrolling, worry about things you can't control, escape activities that add no value to your life. Some quadrant 4 time is necessary for renewal. We all need rest and recreation. But too much here is pure waste. It's where people escape when the pressure of quadrants 1 and 3 becomes too much to bear. Here's the principle that will transform your life. Effective people spend most of their time in quadrant 2. They invest in prevention rather than cure, in building rather than repairing. They focus on important activities before they become urgent. Remember, the key to effectiveness is not managing time, it's managing priorities. It's not about doing more things, it's about doing the right thing. Small, consistent investments in quadrant 2 create enormous long-term results. Like compound interest, the effects multiply exponentially over time. 30 minutes of daily exercise prevents years of health problems. Weekly planning saves hours of crisis management. Daily relationship investments create lifelong bonds of trust and love. The matrix method doesn't just change your schedule, it changes your life. Let me tell you about Michael, a marketing executive who was drowning in his own success. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Corner office, 6-figure salary, prestigious company. But underneath, his life was falling apart. 60-hour weeks, constant emails, back-to-back meetings from dawn to dusk, always putting out fires, always in crisis mode. His marriage was struggling. His wife felt like she was living with a stranger. His health was failing, high blood pressure, chronic fatigue, stress, headaches. And despite all his busyness, his department's results were actually declining. When we sat down and mapped his time, the picture became crystal clear. 70% of his time was spent in quadrant 1 crisis management, 25% in quadrant 3 interruptions, other people's urgent but unimportant demands, only 5% in quadrant 2. No wonder he was burning out. We identified his key quadrant 2 activities: strategic planning for his department, team development and coaching, market research, and protected family time. He began protecting 2 hours each morning for quadrant 2 work. No meetings, no emails, no interruptions. He implemented weekly planning sessions to prevent crises before they started. Most importantly, he learned to say no to quadrant 3 interruptions that didn't serve his mission. The transformation was remarkable. 6 months later, his work week had dropped to 45 hours with dramatically better results. His department exceeded their goals for the first time in 3 years. His marriage relationship was renewed. They started taking weekend getaways and having dinner together without devices. His health improved dramatically when he made exercise and proper nutrition non-negotiable, quadrant 2 priorities. He told me, "Stephen, I went from managing crises to preventing them, from being busy to being effective. I got my life back." Now let me tell you about Sarah, a single mother working 2 jobs, barely keeping her head above water. She lived in constant quadrant 1 survival mode. Every day was a crisis. No time for planning, no time for herself, certainly no time for her dreams. She felt guilty about any time that wasn't immediately productive. We helped her identify small but powerful quadrant 2 investments, 30 minutes of weekly planning and 15 minutes of daily reading for personal development. She began saying no to quadrant 3 activities, committee requests and volunteer obligations that served others but drained her limited energy. She invested in skill development through online courses during lunch breaks. Most importantly, she scheduled sacred family time with her daughter without any distraction. And within 1 year, those small skill investments led to a promotion that eliminated the need for her second job. Her planning prevented many small crises from becoming big ones. Her relationship with her daughter deepened through their protected time together. She's now pursuing her master's degree, something that seemed impossible before the matrix method. But not everyone embraces this approach. Let me tell you about Robert, a successful attorney who was convinced that his busyness was necessary for success. He resisted spending time on Quadrant 2 activities, claiming he didn't have time to plan. He stayed trapped in the urgent, reactive mode year after year, while his colleagues who embraced Quadrant 2 grew and thrived. Robert stagnated. His health declined from chronic stress. His family grew distant. His children stopped sharing their lives with him because he was never truly present. Younger attorneys began surpassing him because they worked smarter, not just harder. He remained busy, became increasingly ineffective. The cost of avoiding Quadrant 2 was far higher than the investment it would have required. These stories illustrate a universal principle. You can choose to be busy, or you can choose to be effective. The matrix method works, but only if you work the method. The question isn't whether you have time for Quadrant 2, it's whether you can afford not to invest in it. To master the matrix method requires what I call the knowledge, skill, desire formula. You now have the knowledge, you understand the 4 quadrants and their impact on your life. Let me give you the skill and help you find the desire to transform that knowledge into life-changing action. Week 1 is about awareness. First, become aware of where your time actually goes, not where you think it goes. For 1 week, categorize every activity into one of the 4 quadrants. Use a simple log. What did I do? How long did it take? Which quadrant does this belong in? Most people are shocked by what they discover. They think they're spending time on important activities, but they're actually trapped in quadrants 1 and 3, crisis management and other people's priorities. Week 2 is about identification and protection. Identify your top 5 to 7 Quadrant 2 activities across all your roles: professional, personal, family, health, spiritual. Examples might include weekly planning, exercise, skill development, relationship building, strategic thinking for your work, quality time with family. Here's the key. Schedule these activities first, before anything else enters your calendar. Treat Quadrant 2 time as sacred, non-negotiable appointments with yourself. If you wouldn't break an appointment with your most important client, don't break an appointment with your most important priorities. Week 3 is about learning the art of saying no. You must learn to distinguish between Quadrant 2 and Quadrant 3 activities, between what's important to you and what's urgent to someone else. Practice saying no to good things so you can say yes to great things. Here are some scripts for common situations. That sounds important, but it doesn't align with my current priorities. Or I'd love to help, but I have commitments I need to honor first. Remember, every yes to something unimportant. Week 4 is about systematic planning. Implement what I call weekly planning, daily adapting. Spend 30 minutes each week planning your Quadrant 2 activities for the coming week. Each morning, spend 10 minutes adapting your plan to the day's realities. This creates the space between stimulus and response where choice lives, where you can respond based on principles rather than react based on pressure. Expect resistance from yourself and others. Quadrant 2 activities often feel selfish because they're not urgent. Others may pressure you to return to old reactive patterns. They're comfortable with the old you who was always available for their emergencies. Remember, taking care of yourself is not selfish. It's essential for taking care of others. You can't give what you don't have. Build your support system. Share the matrix method with family and colleagues. Create accountability partnerships for your Quadrant 2 commitments. Celebrate small wins. Each Quadrant 2 investment compounds over time. Finally, measure what matters. Don't just track what you did, track how it felt. Notice the difference between busy days and effective days. Measure progress by alignment with your values, not just tasks completed. Ask yourself this question each evening. Am I living my mission or just managing my inbox? The choice is yours. Let me bring us back to where we started. That executive on his deathbed who whispered to me, "Stephen, I was so busy climbing the ladder of success, I never noticed he was leaning against the wrong wall." He realized too late that he had spent his life climbing someone else's definition of success while neglecting his own deepest values and relationships. Don't let that be your story. The Matrix method is like a lighthouse in the storm of modern life. It doesn't eliminate the storms. You'll still face urgent demands and unexpected crises, but it guides you safely through them. It helps you navigate by principles, not pressures, by importance, not urgency. I challenge you to live the next 30 days by the Matrix method. Identify your Quadrant 2 priorities and protect them fiercely. Say no to the good so you can say yes to the great. Choose effectiveness over efficiency, purpose over pressure. Remember, effectiveness is not about doing more things. It's about doing the right things. It's not about being busy. It's about being meaningful. The Matrix method doesn't just change how you manage time, it changes how you live your life. These principles are universal. They work for everyone, everywhere, every time. The choice is yours. Will you live by design or by default? Will you be remembered for being busy or for being effective? Your legacy starts with your next choice. Choose wisely.